My name is June Kavanaugh, and I was 39 years old when my stemmer made me sit at the kids' table on Thanksgiving. There were 22 relatives in her dining room that afternoon, not counting the 2 toddlers asleep upstairs, and my mother, who was in a rehab center 12 minutes away. My sister Brielle stood at the head of her new dining table with a wine glass in one hand and said, "You don't get an adult seat after walking away from your own mother." I had a blue enamel pie carrier in my hands, the one my mother used every Thanksgiving when I was little. I had also brought a plain brown folder tucked under my coat with my name written on the tab in black marker. Brielle saw the pie, but she did not see the folder. My father looked at the floor. My cousins stared at their plates, and before the night was over, the same people who nodded, while Brielle humiliated me, would be passing that folder down the table with both hands, like it had become too heavy to hold alone. I did not answer my sister right away. That bothered her more than if I had cried. She had prepared for tears. She had prepared for me to leave. She had prepared for me to defend myself too loudly so she could say, "See, this is what I mean." But she had not prepared for me to set the pie carrier on the small folding table beside a booster seat, take off my coat, and sit down. The kids' bowl was by the sliding glass door, close enough to feel the cold coming through the frame. Brielle's daughter had taped paper turkeys to the glass, and one of them had already started curling at the edges. I remember that because I looked at it while everyone waited for me to break. Across the room, Uncle Ray watched me over the top of his glasses. I did not know yet if he would understand what I had brought. I only knew he was the one person in that room who might read the first page and keep reading. Brielle lifted her glass again. "Some people show up when it matters," she said, "and some people just show up when there's food." A few relatives gave those soft, embarrassed lifts people use when they don't want to be the first one to disagree. I folded my napkin on my lap. That was the first time Brielle looked uncertain. Not scared, not yet, just uncertain. Because I had always been the daughter who explained, the one who rushed to prove I meant well, the one who brought receipts no one wanted to read and apologies no one had earned. That afternoon, I brought the receipts and skipped the apology. Welcome back to the Madeline Files, where quiet people finally stop carrying the version of the story that made everyone else comfortable. If you have ever been blamed for the work you were actually doing, or treated like the problem because you remembered the details, this one is for you. Listen closely, because in families like mine, the lie usually sounds warm at first. It sounds like concern. It sounds like tradition. It sounds like, "Let's not ruin the holiday." And then one ordinary piece of paper changes who gets to speak. When people ask me now whether I knew, before Thanksgiving, that Brielle was going to make a scene, I tell them no. Not exactly. I knew she was angry. I knew she wanted something. I knew she had been telling people I had abandoned Mom, because little pieces of that lie had been finding their way back to me for months. But I did not know she had made a seating chart. That was pure Brielle. Pretty enough to photograph, cruel enough to bleed. Our mother's name was Martha Kavanaugh. She was 67 when the stroke happened. Not the kind of stroke that takes everything at once. The doctors called it moderate, which sounded kinder than it felt. She could still speak, but some words came slowly. Her left hand curled if she was tired. She remembered old songs more easily than she remembered whether she had eaten lunch. Mom had been a school secretary for almost 30 years, the kind of woman who kept extra mittens in her desk drawer and knew which children needed breakfast without embarrassing them. She was not perfect. None of us were. But she was steady in the ways that mattered to children. At home, though, steadiness had a cost. When I was little, Brielle was the bright one. That was the family word for her. Bright. She had shiny hair and a loud laugh, and a way of making adults feel chosen when she smiled at them. She got away with things because she made getting away with things look charming. I was the useful one. I do not mean that as a tragic sentence. It was just how our house worked. If the phone bill needed sorting, Mom handed it to me. If somebody had to run back inside for the forgotten rolls, it was June. If a cousin needed the last chair, Mom would touch my shoulder and say, "June doesn't mind. Most of the time, I didn't, or I told myself I didn't. At 10, I liked being trusted. I liked knowing where the tape was, where Mom kept the emergency cash, how to make coffee for relatives who took cream but no sugar. I liked being praised for not needing much. The first time I remember that praise hurting was at Thanksgiving when I was 13. We were at my Aunt Linda's house, and there were more people than chairs. Brielle had taken the cushioned seat by the window, even though Aunt Linda had set it aside for Grandma. "June, honey," Mom said, "would you mind moving to the piano bench?" I was already holding a plate. Brielle looked up at me with gravy on her fork and said, "You're smaller anyway." Everyone laughed. I moved. The piano bench had a crack in the vinyl that pinched the back of my leg all through dinner. I still remember the feeling of it more clearly than the food. That was how it started. Not with one huge betrayal. With 100 little arrangements where I was asked to make myself easier. By the time we were adults, the roles had hardened. Brielle married Grant Ross, a commercial insurance broker with careful hair and a habit of laughing 1 second too late. They bought a house in Maple Ridge, the kind with a wide front porch and seasonal wreaths. She had 2 kids, Miles and Sophie, both sweet in the unguarded way children can be before adults teach them what to repeat. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment near Westbrook, close to my job and later close to Mom's rehab center. I never married, not because I was against it. It just never became the shape my life took. I worked as a fraud review analyst for a company that handled elder care billing and payment audits. When a long-term care account had duplicate charges, unusual withdrawals, unexplained vendor payments, or reimbursement claims that did not match service dates, files came across my desk. Brielle loved mocking that job. "June can make a spreadsheet feel accused," she said once at Dad's birthday dinner. Another time, when Mom was still well, Brielle raised her glass and said, "To June, our professional receipt organizer." Everybody laughed then, too. I laughed a little because that was easier. But my job taught me something my family did not respect. Numbers have habits. People lie in circles, but money moves in lines. When Mom had the stroke, Brielle became the public daughter. She posted updates. She sent group texts with little prayer emojis. She organized a meal train for 3 days and made sure her name was at the top. She knew how to talk to relatives in a way that made them feel informed without making them responsible. I became the practical daughter. I learned the rehab nurse's shift change schedule. I labeled Mom's clothes with iron-on tags. I called the pharmacy when one prescription got lost between discharge planning and the care facility. I sat through care plan meetings with a notebook on my lap, while Brielle joined on speakerphone from her SUV saying, "Sorry, crazy day," before asking questions we had already answered. Mom had a modest care fund. It was not a fortune. It came from a small life insurance payout after her second husband died, the sale of her old car, and money she had saved over years of careful living. It was meant to cover what insurance did not: aids, rehab gaps, special equipment co-pays, transportation, small comforts. Brielle was listed as the main family contact for convenience because she lived closer to Mom's house at the time of the stroke. I did not fight that. Back then, I still thought being reasonable would protect everyone. I should have known better when Brielle started getting strange about mail. At first, it was small. I asked whether the January statement had come from Mom's care account, and Brielle said, "I'm handling it." I asked whether the overnight aid agency had been paid, and she said, "June, not everything is one of your little audits." I asked whether Mom's supplemental policy needed renewal, and she sighed so loudly I could hear it through the phone. "You know what your problems is?" Brielle said. "You think paperwork is love." I was sitting in my car in the rehab parking lot when she said that. It was raining, and the windshield wipers made that tired rubber sound across the glass. I looked at the building where Mom's room light was still on. "No," I said. "I think unpaid bills become problems." Brielle hung up. 3 days later, Dad called. My father, Dennis Kavanaugh, had been divorced from Mom for 12 years, but he still showed up for family events, like a man who expected credit for not leaving town. He was not cruel in the obvious ways. He was worse in the quieter ones. He loved peace more than he loved truth, and in our family, peace usually meant June stayed quiet. "Your sister says you're making this harder," he told me. I asked for a bank statement. "Why?" "Because Mom's aid agency called me." He paused. "Brielle says she has it covered. Then why are they calling me?" Another pause. Then Dad said, "Can we just not turn this into a thing?" That sentence followed me for months. A thing. Mom's care, her bills, her body. Her left hand curled on the blanket, her voice trying to find the word for water. A thing. The first real crack came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was at work reviewing a file where a grandson had been reimbursing himself from his grandmother's account for transportation, except the gas charges were happening in 3 different states. My desk phone rang, and the caller ID showed Hawthorne Ridge Rehabilitation. I answered with a pen still between my fingers. "June Kavanagh? Yes. This is Marcy in billing. I'm sorry to bother you. We've been trying to reach Brielle Ross about your mother's outstanding balance." I straightened in my chair. "What balance?" There was paper shuffling on the other end. 2 months of private room differential, several therapy copays, and 1 unpaid transport invoice. "The total right now is a little over $7,000. I remember looking down at the fraud file on my desk and seeing the grandson's neat false notes. In the margin, "Are you sure?" I asked. Marcy lowered her voice. "I'm sure. We sent notices." "To Brielle?" "Yes, and to the mailing address on file." The mailing address on file was Brielle's house. I thanked Marcy and asked her to email me copies of the unpaid invoices. She hesitated because of authorization. I understood that. At work, privacy rules were not suggestions. Then she said, "Actually, there's a secondary authorization from your mother. Let me check." My mother had signed it 2 weeks after the stroke, during one of those bright mornings when the fog lifted, and she sounded almost like herself. I remembered the form. I had brought it to the care meeting. Brielle had rolled her eyes because I had printed 2 copies. Mom had taken the pen slowly. Her hand shook. "June keeps things," she said. Brielle laughed then. I did not. That detail stayed with me. By noon that Tuesday, Marcy had sent the invoices. By 2, I had called the bank. By the next week, duplicate paper statements were being mailed to a post office box I had opened near my apartment because I did not trust Brielle's mailbox anymore. I did not tell anyone in the family. Not Dad, not Cousin Melanie, not even Uncle Ray, not yet. The first statement arrived in a white envelope so ordinary I almost hated it. I held it at my kitchen counter beside a cold cup of coffee and a stack of Mom's insurance paperwork. I expected confusion, maybe late payments, maybe Brielle moving money between accounts carelessly, maybe poor tracking. I did not expect the pattern. There were withdrawals labeled as transfers. There were checks written to vendors I did not recognize. There were debit charges that did not fit a woman living in rehab. There were payments on dates when Brielle had told me the account was too low to cover an extra aid. One descriptor caught my eye first. Lakeside Stone and Tile. It was not huge itself. A payment, then another. Then one that looked like a deposit. I stared at the name for a long time. I knew I had heard it somewhere. Then I remembered Brielle's Facebook post from February. "Counters are in. Finally starting to feel like home." There had been a photo of her standing in her half-finished kitchen, one hand on a slab of pale quartz with gray veining. She looked proud and tired and polished, the way she liked to look. I opened the post again on my phone. There, tagged in the comments by one of her neighbors, was the contractor, Lakeside Stone and Tile. I did not move for several seconds. Then I printed the screenshot. That was the first time my hands shook. Not because I did not understand what I was seeing, because I did. I kept going. There was a payment to Northline Academy. Brielle's son Miles went to Northline. There were 3 large credit card payments with transfer numbers that matched Brielle's bank. There was a check to Ross Home Services, which sounded generic until I found out Grant's cousin owned a small contracting company under that name. Meanwhile, Mom's transport invoice sat unpaid. Her therapy copays sat unpaid. The overnight aid had been canceled. That last part I confirmed with Ruth Alvarez. Ruth lived next door to Mom for 11 years. She was a retired CNA with silver hair she wore in a braid and hands that always looked ready to fold a towel or check a pulse. After Mom's stroke, Ruth started visiting when she could. She brought soft socks, grape jelly packets from a diner because Mom liked them better than the rehab kind, and gossip about the neighborhood cats. I trusted Ruth because she did not perform care. She just did it. One evening in April, I found her sitting in the rehab hallway with a thermos on her lap. "You look like paper," she said. "I'm fine. That wasn't a question." She handed me the thermos, chicken soup, still hot. I sat beside her because my legs suddenly felt unreliable. "Did you know the overnight aid was canceled?" I asked. Ruth's mouth tightened. "Yes. By the agency?" "No, honey." I looked at her. She took the thermos cap back and twisted it in her hands. "Your sister called from the parking lot. I was with your mom when the agency confirmed it." Martha cried after. I swallowed. "Why didn't Mom tell me?" "She tried. You were at work. Then Brielle came in and told her not to worry you." Ruth looked at me gently. "Your mother asked for you every Wednesday, June. Don't let anybody tell you different." I had not cried in the billing office. I had not cried at the bank. I had not cried when I printed Brielle's kitchen photo. I cried in that hallway with soup cooling in my hands. Quietly. Ruth did not pat my shoulder like she was calming a child. She just sat there until I was done, then handed me a napkin from her purse. A few weeks later, Brielle started pushing the abandonment story harder. I heard it first from Aunt Linda, who called me while I was loading Mom's laundry into a dryer at the rehab guest laundry room. "Honey," she said, "I don't want to get in the middle. That always means someone has already chosen the middle as a hiding place." "What did Brielle say?" Aunt Linda sighed. "She's just overwhelmed. She feels like you've left her with everything." I looked at Mom's cardigan turning behind the dryer glass. "I visited Mom 4 times this week." "Well, she says you visit when it's convenient, but don't help with the hard parts." "The hard parts like what?" Another sigh. "Money, decisions, being present." I almost laughed, but it came out wrong. "Aunt Linda, did Brielle tell you Mom's care bills are unpaid?" "She said that's because you refuse to contribute." I closed my eyes. There it was. The shape of it. Brielle had not just taken the money. She had built an explanation for the missing money, and the explanation was me. I asked Aunt Linda whether she had seen any invoices. She said no. I asked whether Brielle had asked anyone else for money. She said not yet. But Thanksgiving will probably be a good time to discuss family support. It was May. Thanksgiving was 6 months away. Brielle had already chosen the room. From then on, I moved carefully. I requested every statement I could get under Mom's authorization. I made copies. I highlighted dates. I matched charges. I called Marcy in billing and asked for payment histories. I saved voicemails. I wrote down every time Brielle claimed she had paid something herself. At work, I spent my days tracing other people's ugly little patterns. At night, I traced my sister's. The hardest part was visiting Mom and not telling her everything. She had good days and dim ones. On good days, she would ask specific questions. "Did Brielle pay Hawthorne?" "I'm working on it, Mom." Her eyes would sharpen. "That means no." Sometimes the stroke made her blunt in a way she had never allowed herself before. One afternoon, she looked at me and said, "Your sister likes being seen." I folded a clean sweatshirt and put it in her drawer. "Yes, you like being useful." I stopped. Mom looked out the window toward the courtyard, where a maintenance man was blowing leaves into a pile. "I did that to you," she said. I did not know what to do with the sentence. For years, I had wanted some version of it. Then, it came out of my sick mother's mouth in a rehab room that smelled like lotion and plastic water cups. And all I wanted was to give it back. "You were tired," I said. She turned her head slowly. "That's not the same as right." I looked down at the sweatshirt. "There are apologies you receive too late to fix the years, but not too late to matter." I do not count many sentences as turning points. That one was. In June, Mom signed a more specific authorization naming me as a person allowed to receive records related to her care account and billing. Ruth and Marcy witnessed it. Mom's hand shook so badly that the M in Martha looked like a mountain range. Brielle did not know. She thought she had locked me out by collecting the mail and controlling the family group chat. That was her mistake. Susmer passed in small wars. Brielle told Dad I was harassing the rehab office. Dad called me and said, "Your sister says you're making staff uncomfortable." I said, "Ask the staff. I'm not calling the facility, June. Then don't call me with facility gossip." He went quiet. For 1 second, I thought he heard me. Then he said, "I just wish you girls could work together, you girls." As if we were fighting over a sweater. By September, the folder had sections. The first tab was care bills. The second was bank statements. The third was transfers. The fourth was vendor matches. The fifth was communications. The sixth was authorization. I did not use a yellow legal pad. I used a plain printed timeline, 1 page, because people who do not want truth will use clutter as an excuse. The timeline began with the balance Mom had after the care fund was consolidated, then the legitimate care payments, then the first unexplained transfer, then the canceled aid, then the unpaid rehab invoices, then the lakeside payments. I printed 3 copies and stored one at my apartment, one at work in a sealed envelope, and one in the brown folder I planned to bring if Brielle ever forced the conversation in public. I still hoped she wouldn't. That is the strange thing about betrayal by family. Even when you know what they have done, some part of you keeps hoping they will stop before you have to become the person who proves it. In October, Uncle Ray called me. Uncle Raymond Kavanaugh was Mom's older brother. He was 71, widowed, and quiet, in a way people mistook for fragile. He had worked in credit union compliance for 35 years before retiring to a small condo near the river. He sent birthday cards with checks folded inside and never wrote more than 1 sentence. "I hear Thanksgiving is at Brielle's," he said. "That's what I hear. Are you going?" "I haven't decided." He made a thoughtful sound. "Your mother asked me something years ago," he said, "after Phil died, before the stroke. Phil was Mom's second husband. What did she ask?" "She said if the care money ever became a fight, I should look at the records before the family started making decisions." I stood in my kitchen with my phone pressed to my ear and watched rain run down the window. "She said that?" "She did." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because there wasn't a fight yet," he said. "Now I'm hearing there is." I almost told him everything right then. Instead, I asked, "Will you be at Thanksgiving?" "Yes." "Then I might bring something for you to look at." He did not ask what. He just said, "Put it in order." I almost smiled. I already did. On the Monday before Thanksgiving, Brielle texted me. "Dinner at 3. Please don't be late. Mom would want us united." I stared at that word, united. Below it, she sent a photo of a seating chart written in gold ink. I zoomed in. The adult table had Dad, Uncle Ray, Aunt Linda, Cousin Melanie, several others, Grant and Brielle at the head. My name was not there. I scrolled down. At the bottom, beside the patio door, was the kids' table, June. No last name, no aunt title, just June. I sat on the edge of my bed with the phone in my hand and felt 13 again, holding a plate, being moved to the piano bench. Then another message came through. "I hope this helps everyone understand choices have consequences." I did not answer. I opened my closet and took out Mom's blue enamel pie carrier. The carrier was chipped near the handle, with little white marks showing through the blue. When I was a child, Mom used it for apple pie, cranberry bread, and once for a chocolate cake that slid sideways because Brielle had insisted on holding it in the car and then dropped it when she saw a boy from school. Mom had laughed that day. "Still taste this the same," scooping frosting back into place with a butter knife. I made an apple cranberry pie because that was what Mom always made. I used her recipe card, the one with butter smudges in the corner. Then I put the folder under my coat, flat against my ribs, and drove to Brielle's house. Her street was crowded with cars. I had to park halfway down the block under a bare maple tree. The air smelled like cold leaves and chimney smoke. Brielle's house looked like a magazine version of warmth, pumpkins on the steps, a wreath made of dried orange slices, candles in the windows. Through the front glass, I could see people moving around with wine glasses. I sat in my car for a minute. Not because I was afraid to go in, because once I walked through that door, I knew I would not protect Brielle from herself anymore. The folder lay on the passenger seat. I put it inside my coat and picked up the pie carrier. Brielle opened the door before I knocked. She wore a cream sweater dress and gold hoop earrings. Her hair was pulled back in a loose knot that probably took 40 minutes to look effortless. "You came," she said. "You invited me." Her eyes dropped to the pie carrier. "Oh, good. Dessert table is in the kitchen." No hug. I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the kitchen. It was beautiful. I will give her that. Pale quartz countertops, white cabinets, brass pulls, a deep farmhouse sink, new pendant lights over the island. Lakeside stone and tile had done good work. I set the pie on the island. Brielle did not thank me. She lifted the lid, looked inside and said, "Homemade, that's ambitious." Behind her, Miles came running in with a roll in his hand. "Aunt June," he said. I smiled for real then. "Hey, buddy," he hugged my waist. Brielle put a hand on his shoulder and gently pulled him back. "Let Aunt June settle in," she said. Grant came through carrying a tray of glasses. He looked surprised to see me, which told me something. Brielle had invited me, but maybe she had also suggested I would not come. "June," he said. "Happy Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving." His eyes moved to my coat. "Want me to take that?" "No thanks." I felt the folder against my side. The dining room had been arranged with rented chairs and a long table stretched almost wall to wall. Linen napkins, eucalyptus garland, name cards. The kind of careful beauty that makes people lower their voices. Aunt Linda waved from beside the fireplace. Cousin Melanie smiled too quickly and looked away. Dad stood near the bar cart, turning a bottle of red wine in his hands. And Uncle Ray sat at the far end of the table, already watching. Brielle clapped her hands once. "Okay, everyone, let's start moving to our seats." People laughed and shuffled and reached for drinks. Chairs scraped. Somebody asked where the gravy boat was. A toddler upstairs cried and then stopped. I stood in the doorway between the kitchen and dining room. Brielle came up beside me with the seating chart. "I tried to be thoughtful," she said quietly. "I'm sure," she smiled. Then she pointed to the folding table by the sliding glass door. The kids' table had 6 small chairs, 2 regular folding chairs, paper napkins with cartoon turkeys, and a plastic cup with crayons. My name card sat between Miles and a cousin's teenage daughter who looked mortified on my behalf. I looked at the card, June. Brielle's voice lifted just enough to carry. "You can sit there." The room quieted in little pieces. I did not move yet. Dad set the wine bottle down. "Brielle," he said. For 1 second, I thought he might do it. Not enough to fix everything, just enough to say, "No, we're not doing this." Brielle looked at him, not angry, warning. Dad cleared his throat. "Let's just get through dinner," he said. That was his almost moment. I watched him choose comfort. Then Brielle turned to the room. "I know this feels awkward," she said, with that soft hostess voice people confuse with kindness. "But after everything with Mom, I think it's important that we stop pretending." I heard someone inhale. Brielle looked directly at me. "You don't get an adult seat after walking away from your own mother." The sentence landed exactly where she aimed it. Aunt Linda looked down. Cousin Melanie pressed her lips together. Grant stared at his glass. A few relatives nodded slowly, because nodding is easier than asking what proof someone has. My face got hot. That part is important. Calm is not the same as numb. My stomach tightened so hard I could feel my pulse in my hands. I wanted my mother. I wanted the version of her who would have said my full name from across a room and made space beside her. Instead, I had the blue pie carrier on the island and a folder under my coat. I walked to the kids' table. I sat down. Miles leaned toward me and whispered, "I think this table gets better napkins." I looked at the cartoon turkey on my plate. "I think you're right." He smiled, relieved. Brielle waited for me to object. When I didn't, she looked annoyed, then recovered. "Okay," she said brightly. "Who's ready to eat?" Dinner began with too much noise. That is how families cover cruelty. They pass potatoes over it. They ask who wants white meat. They say the rolls are burning. They laugh too loudly at nothing. I sat beside Miles and across from a 13-year-old named Lily. who kept glancing at me like she wanted to apologize for being 13. Uncle Ray sat at the adult table with his hands folded near his plate. He did not eat much. Brielle stood for a toast before anyone took the first bite. "I just want to say how grateful I am for the people who have truly shown up this year," she said. "Mom's illness has shown us who we can count on." I looked at my water glass. There it was, the second layer. "Some of us have had to make hard calls," Brielle continued. "Some of us have carried responsibilities we never expected. And some people have made excuses." Dad murmured. "Brielle." She ignored him. "No, Dad. I think it needs to be said. I think families fall apart when people pretend neglect is a personality difference." Aunt Linda nodded faintly. My fork stayed beside my plate. Brielle looked at me. "I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. That was almost funny." Across from me, Lily stared at her mashed potatoes. Miles swung his feet under the table. Then he said, not quietly enough, "Mom said Grandma helped pay for the kitchen because she doesn't need her house anymore." The room froze for half a breath. Brielle's head snapped toward him. "Miles," she said, sharp enough that he flinched. He looked confused. "What?" Grant's face changed first. Not fully. Just a small tightening around the mouth. I looked at the countertops visible through the dining room doorway. Pale quartz, gray veining, lakeside stone and tile. I filed Miles's sentence away, though I already knew exactly where it belonged. Brielle laughed too brightly. "Kids hear everything wrong," she said. Nobody answered. Then Aunt Linda asked for cranberry sauce, and the room allowed itself to move again. I ate 3 bites of turkey and 1 bite of stuffing. I remember the stuffing had too much sage. I remember because ordinary details become sharp when you are holding yourself still. Brielle kept watching me. She wanted a reaction. Every few minutes, she dropped another sentence like a match. "Of course, some of us know the nurses by name. I knew every nurse on Mom's hall. It's amazing what you learn when you actually take the calls. I had call logs from Hawthorne Ridge. Caregiving isn't just showing up for photo ops. I had not posted a single photo of Mom since the stroke because she asked me not to." At the adult table, Cousin Melanie shifted in her chair. Once, our eyes met. She looked away so fast it told me she knew at least one piece of the truth, and not because of me. Halfway through dinner, Dad stood and said he was going to check the football score. He did not watch football. He walked into the kitchen and stood by the sink with his back to us. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered the phone calls. "Can we not turn this into a thing? Your sister says. Let's just get through dinner." I stopped waiting for him in that moment. Not dramatically. No door slammed inside me. It was quieter than that. A chair pulled back from a table I had been trying to earn a seat at for too long. After the plates were cleared, Brielle brought out coffee and pie. My pie had been cut unevenly. The blue carrier sat empty on the counter, lid tilted beside it. Brielle carried her own pumpkin cheesecake to the adult table and set it down like a centerpiece. Then she said, "Before dessert, there's something we need to discuss as a family." Grant looked up. "Brielle." "It's okay," she said. "This is the right time." Uncle Ray put his coffee down. I knew then. The humiliation had not been the whole plan. It was only the setup. Brielle reached behind the sideboard and pulled out a stack of papers, clipped together with silver binder clips. My skin went cold. "I didn't want to do this," she said. That was how I knew she very much wanted to. But Mom's care costs have become unsustainable. I have covered more than my share. Emotionally, physically, financially. And I can't keep doing it while certain people pretend this isn't their responsibility. She handed the papers to Aunt Linda first. "What is this?" Aunt Linda asked. "A family contribution agreement," Brielle said. "Nothing legal heavy, just an understanding. Everyone gives what they can, and the people who have given nothing start making it right." Her eyes came to me. I wiped my hands on my napkin. The folder was still under my coat, which hung over the back of my little folding chair. Brielle walked toward me with a copy of the agreement. The adult table watched. The kids watched. The paper turkeys curled on the glass behind me. She placed the agreement beside my plate. "You can start by signing." I looked at the first page. The total she listed as unpaid family-covered care expenses was wrong, not just inflated. Wrong in a way that told me she had invented it from fear, not records, $28,000, not from any invoice, not from any payment history, not from Hawthorne Ridge, not from the aid agency, just a number big enough to make me look guilty and small enough to sound believable. I turned one page. There was a line stating that I acknowledged I had failed to participate in Martha Kavanaugh's care obligations from January through November. I looked up. "You want me to sign this tonight?" Brielle smiled sadly. "I want you to take responsibility tonight." Uncle Ray's chair creaked. Dad had come back from the kitchen but stayed standing near the doorway. I asked, "Did an attorney prepare this?" Brielle's expression tightened. That is such a June question. A few relatives chuckled softly. She lifted her voice. "This is exactly what I mean. Mom is lying in a rehab center, and June wants to debate paperwork." I looked at the paper again. Brielle leaned closer, lowering her voice only slightly. "You are not going to audit your way out of abandoning her." That sentence was supposed to finish me. Instead, it opened the door. I took my coat from the chair back. I pulled out the brown folder. The room went very quiet. Brielle saw it then. Her eyes flicked from the folder to my face. "What is that?" I did not answer her. I stood, holding the folder with both hands, and looked at Uncle Ray. "Would you read this, please?" I did not walk to Brielle. I did not hand it to Dad. I did not defend myself to the room. I slid the folder down the adult table. It moved past Aunt Linda's plate, past Cousin Melanie's coffee cup, past a bowl with one spoonful of sweet potatoes left in it, until Uncle Ray reached out and stopped it with his palm. He looked at me once. Then he opened it. The first page was the timeline. Uncle Ray adjusted his glasses. No one spoke. Brielle laughed once, a small hard sound. "Are you serious? You brought a folder to Thanksgiving." I sat back down at the kids' table. "Yes." "That's sick, June." Uncle Ray turned the page. He did not look sickened. He looked focused. Brielle pointed at me with the agreement still in her hand. "This is what I've been dealing with. She turns everything into suspicion. She can't just show up like a normal daughter." Uncle Ray turned another page. Aunt Linda whispered, "Ray?" Lifted one bow here without looking up. That single finger did what all my explanations had never done. It made the room wait. Brielle's face flushed. "Ray, don't encourage this." He read for another few seconds. Then he said, "Brielle." His voice was quiet. She stopped. He held up one bank statement. "Why did Martha's care account pay Lakeside Stone and Tile 4 days before your countertops were installed?" No one moved. The question sat in the middle of the table. Brielle blinked. "What?" Uncle Ray repeated it. "Why did your mother's care account pay Lakeside Stone and Tile 4 days before your countertops were installed?" Grant's head turned slowly toward her. Brielle's mouth opened, then closed. "That's not what that is." Uncle Ray looked at the paper. "It says Lakeside Stone and Tile." It was a reimbursement thing. "For whose care?" I asked. I did not raise my voice. That made it worse for her. Brielle looked at me like she hated the sound of my calm. "You don't know what you're talking about." Uncle Ray turned another page. "Northline Academy," he said. Grant's fork hit his plate. Miles looked at his father, confused. Uncle Ray continued. 3 payments. Same account. Same quarter. Martha was at Hawthorne Ridge during all 3. Brielle reached for the folder. Uncle Ray moved it away. "Ray," she said, suddenly soft. "This is private. You made it public," he said. That was the first crack loud enough for everyone to hear. Aunt Linda covered her mouth. Cousin Melanie stared at the table. Dad said, "Maybe we should all take a breath." I looked at him. No, the word surprised even me. Not because it was loud. It wasn't, because it was clean. Brielle turned on me. "You have no idea what I've paid. I have the care payment history. You have copies. You don't have context. I have the unpaid invoices. I was going to fix that." "With what?" She did not answer. Uncle Ray turned to the vendor matches tab. I had kept it simple. Statement line, vendor name, date, related invoice or public record. Notes. He read silently for almost a minute. Nobody touched dessert. The children knew something adult and ugly was happening, but not what kind. Lily had stopped pretending not to listen. Miles looked smaller than he had at dinner. Grant stood. "Let me see." Brielle grabbed his sleeve. "Grant, don't." He looked at her hand, then at Uncle Ray. Ray handed him one copy, not the whole folder. Grant read the first page, then the second. His face did not go red, it went gray. "What is Ross Home Services doing on here?" he asked. Brielle whispered, "Please don't do this in front of everyone." The room heard her. A few minutes earlier, she had wanted everyone. That is how fast public truth changes the temperature. Uncle Ray looked at Cousin Melanie. "Melanie." She startled. "What? Did Brielle ever talk to you about using Martha's account for house expenses?" Melanie's eyes filled instantly. Brielle said, "Don't answer that." Ray did not look away from Melanie. Melanie pressed a napkin to her lips. She said, her voice broke. She said the money would just get eaten by care costs anyway. She said Mom would rather help family. Brielle stood so fast, her chair hit the wall. "That is not what I meant." Grant stared at her. "She said it at Sophie's birthday party," Melanie whispered. "In the laundry room. I thought she was exaggerating." Aunt Linda said, "Oh my God." Dad rubbed both hands over his face. Brielle pointed at Melanie. "You're twisting this." Melanie started crying. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to get involved." I looked at her then. For a second, I saw the whole family system sitting there in one sentence. Nobody wanted to get involved when Mom's money disappeared, but everyone was willing to be present when I was blamed for it. Uncle Ray closed the folder halfway, keeping one fingers inside to mark his place. "Brielle," he said, "did you use your mother's care account for personal expenses?" "No." "Did you transfer money from that account into yours?" "I managed funds." "Did you pay Hawthorne Ridge?" "I was working on it." "Did you cancel the overnight aid?" "She didn't need." She cried after, Ruth's voice said. Every head turned. I had not known she was there. Ruth Alvarez stood in the doorway from the kitchen, holding the empty blue pie carrier. For one impossible second, all I could do was look at the carrier in her hands. Then I remembered. Brielle had invited a few neighbors to stop by for dessert because she liked looking generous. Ruth must have come in through the kitchen door, the way neighbors do in houses where they have been welcome before. Brielle looked horrified. "Ruth, this is family business." Ruth held the pie carrier against her hip. "Martha is my family business." Her voice was steady, not dramatic. She looked at Uncle Ray. "I was in the room when the agency confirmed the overnight aid had been canceled." Martha asked for June. Brielle told her not to worry June because June had made her choices. Brielle shook her head. "That is not fair." Ruth reached into her cardigan pocket and took out her phone. "I also have Martha's voicemail from that Wednesday," she said. "The one she left June when Brielle said June had stopped visiting." My throat tightened. I knew the voicemail. Mom had called while I was at work. The message was mostly breathing and one clear sentence. "June, bring the grape jelly." I had saved it too. But hearing Ruth say she had kept it made something in me loosen painfully. Brielle looked around the room, searching for the old version of the audience. The nodding audience. The embarrassed audience. The audience that wanted the problem to be me. It was gone. Aunt Linda was crying silently. Cousin Melanie looked sick. Grant had both hands on the back of a chair, like he needed it to stay upright. Dad still stood near the doorway, but now he looked less like a peacemaker and more like a man trying to calculate how much he had chosen not to see. Brielle's voice changed. "June," she said. It was the first time all night she had said my name like a sister instead of a verdict. "June, please. You don't understand the pressure I was under." I looked at her. There was stuffing on the tablecloth, a cranberry stain near Aunt Linda's plate, a child's crayon on the floor by my shoe, ordinary things sitting beside the wreckage of a lie. "You're right," I said. "I don't understand stealing from Mom and blaming me for the bills." She flinched. "Don't call it stealing. What should I call it?" She looked at Dad. Dad opened his mouth. I waited. This was his second chance. He said, "Maybe we shouldn't use words we can't take back." I almost smiled, not because it was funny, because it was exactly him. I turned to Uncle Ray. "What happens next?" Ray took out his phone. "I'm calling the bank's elder exploitation line tomorrow morning." "Tonight." I'm emailing these copies to the attorney Martha, named in her care documents. The account needs to be reviewed and access restricted until this is sorted. Brielle said, "You can't do that." Ray looked at her over his glasses. "I can," Grant said very quietly. "How much?" Nobody'd answered at first. He looked at me. "How much, June?" The title people later put on the story would use the round number. 90,000. It was close enough for a headline. The folder showed the exact amount across transfers, payments, and missing care funds. I did not say the number in front of Miles. I looked at Grant and said, "Enough that Mom's care was interrupted." That landed harder than the total, because money can become abstract. A canceled aid cannot. Brielle sat down like her knees had stopped believing in her. Then came the pivot. It always comes. When cruelty fails, people like Brielle reach for tenderness like a costume. "We can fix this," she said. "June, we can fix this together. I know you're angry. I know you felt left out. But you don't want to destroy this family." I looked at the kids at the table, at my name card, at the agreement she had wanted me to sign. "You were fine destroying me." Her eyes filled with tears then. Real tears, I think. But real tears do not make a lie less deliberate. "I was overwhelmed," she whispered. Ruth set the pie carrier down on the counter. "You were funded," she said. No one laughed, but Aunt Linda made a small sound into her napkin. Brielle's face twisted. "You don't get to judge me," she snapped at Ruth. "You're not even family," Ruth nodded once. "No," she said. "I just showed up." The silence after that was different. Not shocked, settled. Uncle Ray gathered the folder pages back into order. He did it carefully, tapping the edges on the table like a man closing a meeting. Brielle reached again. "This stays here." Ray kept the folder. "No." Dad finally stepped forward. "Ray, maybe we should let everyone cool down." Ray looked at him. "Dennis, your former wife's care money has been used for things that are not care. Cooling down is not a plan." Dad's face tightened. "I'm not saying do nothing." "That is exactly what you have been saying," I said. He looked at me, wounded. "That look used to work on me." "June, no." Again, the word came easily. He said, "I didn't know. You didn't ask." His mouth opened, then closed. Brielle whispered, "This is humiliating." I looked around the room, the kids' table, the name card, the agreement, the 22 relatives. The adult seat she said I did not deserve. "Yes," I said. "It is." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Grant picked up the family contribution agreement from beside my plate. He read the first page, then tore it once across the middle. Brielle gasped. "Grant." He did not look at her. "Did you use that money for our house?" She covered her face. That was answer enough. I stood. My legs felt strange, like they had belonged to someone else for the last hour and were only now returning to me. Miles looked up at me. "Are you leaving?" I touched his shoulder gently. "Yeah, buddy. Is Grandma okay?" I looked at him, then at Brielle. "She's going to have more people making sure she is." He nodded, though he did not fully understand. That was one of the saddest parts. Children learn the shape of adult lies before they know the words for them. I took my coat. Ruth picked up the blue pie carrier, but I shook my head. "Keep it for now," I said. I do not know why. Maybe I was tired of carrying things out of Brielle's house. Maybe I forgot that it mattered. Maybe some part of me knew Ruth would return it better than Brielle ever could. At the door, Brielle followed me. "June, wait." I turned. Behind her, the dining room looked smaller than it had when I arrived. The long table, the candles, the garland, the perfect chairs. All of it suddenly looked like decoration around a broken thing. Brielle wiped her face. "Please don't do this." I said, "I didn't do this." "You know what I mean." "I do." She stepped closer. "We're sisters." That word had been missing all night until she needed it. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said the sentence I had not planned, though it had been building for years. "I showed up for Mom. I'm done sitting where your lie puts me." Her face changed. Not because I was cruel, because I was finished. I left before anyone could turn my exit into another family discussion. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. I walked down the block to my car under the bare maple tree. My phone buzzed before I even unlocked the door. Dad, then Aunt Linda, then Dad again, then a text from Cousin Melanie. "I'm sorry." I sat in the driver's seat and watched my breath fog the windshield. For a few minutes, I did not drive. I did not feel victorious. That is not the right word. I felt emptied out, like I had been holding a heavy box for years and finally set it down, only to realize my arms were shaking. Ruth came out 10 minutes later. She had no coat on, just her cardigan, and she moved quickly across the sidewalk, holding a foil-wrapped plate. I rolled down the window. "You didn't eat," she said. "I ate 3 bites. "That's not eating." She handed me the plate through the window. Turkey, potatoes, a slice of my own pie. Then she handed me a folded napkin. Inside was my name card from the kids' table. June. "I thought you might want to throw that away yourself," she said. I laughed once, and it came out like a sob. Ruth leaned down. "You did good, honey." I shook my head. "I should have done it sooner." "No," she said. "You did it when there were enough eyes open." I looked back at Brielle's house. Through the front window, I could see shadows moving around the dining room. Nobody looked like they knew where to stand. "Will you check on Mom tomorrow?" I asked. I was already going. Of course she was. The next morning, Uncle Ray did exactly what he said he would do. He called the bank. He called the elder law attorney. He sent copies. He did not dress it up as a misunderstanding. He used the words suspicious transfers, misappropriation, interruption of care, and vulnerable adult. By Monday afternoon, Brielle no longer had free access to Mom's account. By Wednesday, Hawthorne Ridge had updated its billing contacts. Marcy called me herself. "I'm glad this is getting handled," she said carefully. "So am I." There were forms after that. Meetings, calls, a review. Grant hired his own attorney, which told me the marriage had entered a room I was not responsible for. Uncle Ray became part of a temporary oversight arrangement with the elder law attorney, and I stayed involved only where Mom's care required it. That was important. I did not become the new Brielle. I did not take over everything just because I could do it better. I had spent my whole life confusing responsibility with rescue. They look similar from the outside, but only one of them leaves you with a self. Mom's overdue bills were addressed. The overnight aid was restored for the nights she needed one. The private room differential was renegotiated. Some money was recovered quickly because Grant paid back what he could trace to the house, whether out of guilt, fear, or both. The rest became formal and slow, which is often how consequences move when paperwork is involved. Brielle called me 11 times in the first week. I answered once. Her voice was hoarse. "June," she said, "I need to see Mom. You can arrange that through the care team. You're keeping me from her." "No, I'm keeping you away from her money," she cried then. "I made mistakes. Yes, I was drowning. Mom was the one who lost care." Silence. Then softer. "Do you hate me?" I looked at the stack of clean towels I had been folding for Mom. "No," I said. She exhaled shakily. "But I don't trust you," I added. The crying stopped. There it was. The thing she could not turn into sympathy. Trust. Not anger. Not punishment. Not revenge. Just the absence of access. Dad came to my apartment 2 weeks later without calling first. I saw him through the peephole, holding a paper grocery bag like an offering. I almost did not open the door. Then I did, but I left the chain on. He looked older than he had at Thanksgiving. "I brought coffee," he said. "I have coffee." He looked down at the bag. "Right." Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then he said, "I should have said something." "Yes. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't want to know." He nodded slowly, like the sentence had weight. "I thought if I stayed neutral, I was helping. You weren't neutral. You were standing where it was easier." His eyes filled, but he did not argue. That mattered. Not enough to erase things, but enough for the conversation we were having. "I'm sorry," he said. I believed he was sorry. I also knew sorry did not get the old version of me back. "I need space," I said. "How much?" "I don't know." He swallowed. "Okay." He left the coffee by the door. I did not bring it in until after he drove away. Cousin Melanie sent a longer message. She said she should have spoken up when Brielle made the comment at Sophie's birthday. She said she had been scared of being cut out. She said seeing me at the kids' table made her feel sick. I wrote back 2 sentences. "Thank you for telling the truth when Ray asked. I wish you had told it sooner." She did not ask for more than that. I appreciated it. Aunt Linda called several times before leaving a voicemail. "Honey, I think we all owe you an apology," she said. I listened to it while sitting in my car outside Hawthorne Ridge. Then I deleted it. Not because I hated her. Because I did not need to collect apologies like proof that I had been hurt. Mom was having a good day when I told her the basic version. Not all of it. Enough. She sat in her recliner by the window, a lavender blanket over her legs. Ruth had braided her hair. A small cup of grape jelly sat on her lunch tray. Brielle used the care account for things that were not care, I said. Mom closed her eyes. One tear moved down the side of her face. "I wondered," she whispered. "I know, she always wanted pretty things." I sat beside her. "I'm sorry, Mom." Her eyes opened. No, the word came slowly, but firmly. "Not yours." I looked down at our hands, mine holding hers. Naeftief curled, her right still warm around my fingers. For a long time, we just sat there. Then she said, I laughed. "Ruth has the carrier." Mom's mouth moved into a small smile. "Good." The blue pie carrier came back to me 3 weeks later. Ruth brought it to Hawthorne Ridge on a Sunday afternoon. She had washed it so thoroughly the chipped handle shone. Inside were 2 slices of apple cranberry pie, wrapped in wax paper, and a note written on the back of a grocery receipt. "You don't have to carry it back to the same table." I stood in the rehab family room, holding that little note while Mom slept in a chair beside the window. Ruth pretended to fuss with paper plates so I could have a moment without being watched too closely. That was the first holiday season I did not ask where I was supposed to be. I made Christmas small. Mom, Ruth, Uncle Ray, and me in the rehab family room with grocery store ham, ginger ale, soft rolls, and pie from the blue carrier. Uncle Ray brought a deck of cards. Ruth brought real cloth napkins because she said paper ones give up too fast. Mom wore a red sweater and stayed awake for almost an hour. No seating chart, no tests, no one asking me to prove I had loved enough. At one point, Mom looked around the little room and said, "This is nice." It was. Not perfect, not healed, not the family photo Brielle would have posted. Nice, that was enough. In January, I got an envelope from Brielle's attorney. I set it on my kitchen table and looked at it for a full minute before opening it. Inside was formal language about repayment, disputed intent, family misunderstanding, stress, temporary hardship. I read it once, then sent it to the attorney handling Mom's care oversight. I did not call Brielle. That was new for me. Old June would have tried to understand the emotion under every bad act. Old June would have worried that refusing contact made her cold. Old June would have written 3 paragraphs to make one boundary sound gentle. I did not do that anymore. A few months later, I ran into Grant at Hawthorne Ridge. He was leaving as I arrived, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders rounded. He stopped when he saw me. "June." "Grant." He looked toward the parking lot. I didn't know. I believed him, mostly. "I know." I should have asked. He nodded. "Miles keeps asking about you. That hurt." "He can call me," I said, "if Brielle allows it." Grant looked ashamed. "I'll try." I did not make it easier for him. That was not my job either. Inside, Mom was waiting with Ruth. They were watching an old game show too loudly because Mom liked guessing answers before the contestants. Ruth turned when I came in. "There she is," she said. "The woman with the good jelly." I held up the diner packets. Mom smiled. That was the life I chose in pieces, not dramatic, not clean. A visit, a packet of jelly, a folder copied and filed, a phone call not answered. A table where nobody had to earn the adult chair by swallowing a lie. The last time Brielle and I spoke in person was almost a year after that, Thanksgiving. It was in the courthouse hallway, after a financial review hearing related to Mom's care account. I will not dress it up. It was ugly. Not screaming ugly, paperwork ugly, fluorescent lights, vending machines, shoes squeaking on tile, attorneys speaking in low voices near elevators. Brielle looked thinner. Her hair was shorter. She saw me by the window and walked over before anyone could stop her. "I hope you're happy," she said. There was the old Brielle. Not the crying one, not the soft sister from the doorway. The one who needed me to be guilty so she could stand herself. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, "I hope ma snafe." She looked away first. That was enough. I did not need to win the hallway. The documents had already done what they needed to do. The family changed after that, but not in the way people imagine. There was no grand reunion where everyone admitted every wrong and promised to do better. Some relatives apologized, some disappeared, some still speak to Brielle because families are complicated and comfort is stubborn. I let them. I do not chase the jury anymore. Uncle Ray calls me every Sunday evening. We talk about Mom, his neighbor's terrible parking, and sometimes nothing at all. Dad and I are careful. That is the honest word. Careful. He visits Mom now without asking me to coordinate it. He sends me updates instead of instructions. Maybe that is growth. Maybe it is guilt with better manners. I accept what is useful and keep my distance from the rest. Ruth is still Ruth. She knows which vending machine steals quarters. She knows which nurse sings under her breath. She knows when I am tired before I say so. Last Thanksgiving, I did not go to Brielle's house. I brought the blue pie carrier to Ruth's apartment. Her kitchen table seats 4. One leg wobbles unless you put a folded envelope under it. She made turkey breast in a roasting pan. Uncle Ray brought green beans. I brought pie. Mom could not leave the rehab center that day, so we ate early, packed a plate, and took it to her while it was still warm. When I opened the carrier, Ruth smiled. Still carrying dessert, she said. I looked at the chipped blue handle, only where I want to. Mom ate 3 bites of pie and declared it better than hers, which was not true, but I accepted the compliment. On the windowsill in her room, I had placed a small framed photo, not from Brielle's perfect house, not from any holiday where I had been arranged at the edge. It was a picture Ruth had taken in the rehab family room. Mom in her red sweater, Uncle Ray holding cards, me laughing at something just outside the frame. You can see the blue pie carrier open on the table. No one is performing. No one is proving. We are just there. Sometimes people ask whether I miss my family. The answer is yes. But I miss a version of them that did not exist often enough to build a life around. I miss what I kept trying to earn. I miss what I thought would happen if I was patient enough, helpful enough, quiet enough, good enough with the bills and the chairs and the hard parts. Then I remember the kids' table. I remember my father looking at the floor. I remember Brielle saying I did not get an adult seat. And I remember Uncle Ray's finger lifting, asking the room to wait while the paper spoke. That memory no longer hurts the same way. It still hurts, but it also steadies me, because I know exactly what happened. I know what I carried. I know what I put down. That's my story. A blue enamel pie carrier, one cruel sentence at a Thanksgiving table, and a folder that finally made the room stop nodding. If someone in your life only values you when you are useful, take this as your sign to look at what you are carrying and ask who it actually belongs to. You do not have to scream to be done. Sometimes you just keep the copies, tell the truth once, and walk toward the table where your name was never used as a punishment. If this story found you at the right time, leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. And if you've ever been the one expected to handle everything quietly, I hope you know this. Being calm does not mean it didn't hurt. It means you survived long enough to choose what comes next.